Welcome back. Today I have something a little different I want to share with you. This is sort of a training strategy, something I was talking about earlier tonight in one of my classes, and I thought, why not put together a quick little video tip on it and share it with you guys. It's something most people are familiar with, yet they fail to implement it. So what am I talking about? Well, let's actually start at the beginning. In our martial arts training, we learn our basics, we learn our self-defense techniques, forms, whatever it is that you're learning and practicing in whatever system you study. And along the way, as the instructor introduces the different movements to you, they paint a pretty clear picture of where you're headed, what the movement should look like over time as your skill evolves. So if you were to imagine that this were a map, and I marked the map and I said, okay, here's where we're headed. That's sort of the image that we paint in our minds as we're learning the technique. We know this is where we're headed. Now if I ask you, where do we want to go? What are the directions that we need to take to get there? You would say, well, there's something missing. Quite obviously, we need to know not just where we're headed, but we'd have to mark another spot on the map and say, okay, this is where we're starting from. And now we can start taking steps in the right direction. Without this, you can start taking steps, but you might be headed in the wrong direction, possibly the complete opposite direction. So with an understanding of that, what we really want to do is be able to zero in on exactly where we are, to create as clear an image as possible so that the steps that we are taking are as precise as possible, are pointed in the appropriate direction, as sharp as possible. And so there's several things that you might do to help you out along the way. One, in your training, in most dojos, a lot of dojos have mirrors. There's many dojos that don't. Now, the mirrors can prove useful, but they certainly have their limitations. For instance, Les Brown said you can't see the picture if you're in the frame. And when you're doing a movement in the mirrors, your focus is divided because you're focusing on trying to see the mistakes you're making while you're focusing on performing the movement correctly. So you can see how that could pose a problem. So we need to step outside the frame, and we need to get a perspective that's coming from outside the frame that really paints a more clear and accurate representation of where we are. So what we typically do is we rely on our instructors to paint that picture for us, and that's a very powerful method. And of course, our instructors very often see things that we don't, that we might not even be at the level to understand just yet. So their guidance is invaluable. But there is another tool that you can use that will prove to be an incredibly valuable asset in your training arsenal. And what is that? Well, it's something I'm using right now to communicate to you. That's video. Video is so powerful. In fact, when I bought this camera, we went out in November, we went to New York, we bought the camera, we come back to Monday's class. This was on a weekend we got the camera, and on Monday I took one of my most advanced students aside. This is a very talented student, someone that performs their basics, I mean, just phenomenal. But this person has been struggling with their side kick, and I've been illustrating to them, I've been demonstrating, okay, this is what you're doing when you're throwing the side kick. This is what it should look like. I gave them a picture of both coming from me. Now, something interesting happened because I wanted to test out the camera. So I took this student aside. I brought them in the other dojo while class was warming up, and I said, okay, just perform a kata. Pick a kata you want to do. And they performed their kata. And then we went in the office, we watched the video. And now I'm focused on making sure the audio visual is working when something really interesting, really incredible happened. It got to a point where she was performing her side kick in the form. Now again, I'm not even focused on if she's doing the form correctly. I'm focused on making sure the camera that we just spent a lot of money on is working correctly. Well, it gets to that point and she says, oh, now I see what you're talking about. Now I get it. So I'm telling you, I want to re-emphasize, this is such a powerful tool in your arsenal. And we live in a time where you don't need a fancy camera to do this. Most people have a smartphone, and if you don't have a smartphone, you have a friend that has one. But that's my tip today. I would encourage you, start not just using the guidance of your instructor, most certainly do that, I'm going out to Boston later this month to train with one of my instructors, one of my white crane instructors, to continue to get more guidance on areas of improvement I need to make. Use your instructor, that's a valuable tool. But guess what else is going to be happening while I'm out there? I've done this with all of my lessons with this instructor. He's been great, he's let me do this. I'm going to be filming the lesson. So if I don't understand what he's telling me I need to work on at the lesson, sometimes it doesn't click, and then you go home. I found this with myself. You watch the lesson, you watch what you're doing and listen to what the instructor's saying, and you see it in a new light. So again, that's my tip. I think if you start putting video to use, I think most of us know how beneficial it can be. Bruce Lee used it in his training. But despite the fact that most of us know the benefits that video can provide, very few, even in my school, very few people take the steps to actually apply it. So start putting video to use in your training and you'll experience undoubtedly exponential growth in your progress. All right, that's it for this tip. I hope you guys enjoyed and we'll see you soon. Take care.